Okay, we're now 6 weeks in. Well, 6 rounds, should I say, because technically 7 weeks if you count the Vegas games. 6 rounds are now completed in the NRL season for this year. Only a couple of games in this round of fixtures were blowout scores. A lot of the games very, very close. 2 games went to golden point. One's ended up in a tie. Fantastic round of fixtures. Everyone's scoring points. There's still one winless team, which is the Titans. They narrowly lost to my team, the Raiders, in Golden Point. But some fantastic and very interesting results. Obviously, the Knights kicked off the round against the Roosters. The Roosters edged out the Knights in a 22-20 point final score. Neither side's fully playing at their best, I think. I think the Roosters and Knights are misfiring somewhat. So it was an interesting one. Two very evenly matched sides. Both sides have got players missing with injury and suspension. Kalen Ponga is the main injury concern for the Knights coming out of this game with a hip injury. Let's see how they manage that in the coming days and weeks, and if that's going to have an impact on the Knights. He's a key. He's key for them. The Roosters, Dom Young's obviously suspended following the Bulldogs' defeat. Roosters aren't firing on all cylinders yet. There's been a few concerns with the Roosters. They've had some really good wins, but they've been very inconsistent. Let's see if they can build some consistency. The Storm versus the Bulldogs. Storm won 16 points to 14 at home. Bulldogs nearly pulled off a shock win, considering where both sides are at. Although the Bulldogs, there are some really positive signs with the Bulldogs. They basically did back up their win over the Roosters last weekend, narrowly losing to the Storm in a very, very close match, hotly contested. They gave it everything. There are some warning signs with the Storm that all is not well defensively. It was a scrappy win by their standards, but a win nonetheless, and they continued their great record at Amy Park to start the season. The Broncos Dolphins, 28 points to 14 in favour of the Broncos. The Dolphins, Tabusai Fido going down injured is a concern. But the Broncos, again, a bit inconsistent. The Dolphins have had a really good start to the season, all things considered, but they still have never beaten the Broncos, so that's a bogey team for the Dolphins. Broncos, solid win, good. One of the few, a bit more of a blowout scoreline. They had a comfortable 14-point margin at the end. The Broncos on their day can beat anyone. I think they will potentially challenge the Panthers for another grand final spot and potentially a premiership. I have no doubt on that. I think they are backing up some of the stuff they showed last year, although they have had some defeats so far this season. So there are still a few issues with this Broncos side, especially when things turn against them. But in this game, they were comfortable in the end. The Dolphins gave it a good crack, but the Dolphins do have some injury concerns coming out this game. Now, the Warriors Sea Eagles ended up going to Golden Point. It was a tie, 22 points all. The Warriors, I think, are backing up their credentials from last year. They're playing almost exactly the same. Of course, they've lost Metcalf for a while with that broken leg, but they showed some real good signs, and they never gave up. Neither did the Sea Eagles, so both sides showed some real good grit and determination in this game. It's very rare that Golden Point game ends up as a tie. Very, very rare, although the Raiders Titans nearly did as well, which would have been ridiculous. I don't think we've had two Golden Point games end up at ties on the same weekend. Neither side was willing to give an inch. Fantastic match. Very hard. Well, you couldn't pick a winner. Two really evenly balanced and sides against each other. The Sea Eagles have shown some real positive signs, as have the Warriors. But both sides have a few players out injured and a few players on the outer in their 30-man elite squads. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in following weeks. But that was a proper fun match to watch. And I think both will be top 8 sides at this current point in the season, come the end of the season. The Eels-Cowboys was a close game. The Cowboys weren't at their best. They went into the weekend top. The Eels needed that win, 27 points to 20. Obviously, Mitch Moses is out long term with that broken foot. They needed that win. There's been some question mark over who should be the halves partner for Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown had a much better game this week. And the Eels showed a bit more fight this week as well. They were very, very disappointing last week. Good bounce back win. They needed that. That's eased the pressure on themselves. There's been a lot of speculation on the situation there. That was a pressure easing win for the Eels. Can they now just get some momentum going while Mitch Moses is out and pick up more wins than losses? I think that'll be vital. They are a top 8 side. They did miss out last year, but they are a top 8 side on paper. They're not that far removed from a grand final. They can play really well in attack. Clint Gutherson had a fantastic match as captain and leader of that side. The Bunnies, Sharks. The Sharks win 34 points to 22 away from home. The the poor start to the season continues for the Bunnies. They showed more in this game than in recent weeks. Obviously, Latrell Mitchell not being there was a noticeable absence. They played better. They did play better, but unfortunately, while they showed more fight in this game, they've still conceded 34 points and lost. That means they've only won one game to start the season in 6. They've got the bye coming up, and of course the big talk is around Jason Demetriou and his long-term position as head coach. Will he be there after the bye round, which they have next week in round 7? The Sharks are cementing their top 8 credentials as well. Still not their best game. I think the Sharks, while they have some injury concerns in the forward pack with a few players out, they are starting, I think, to win games that in previous years they may have either been closer or lost. They have had some worrying defeats over the last couple of years, but Craig Fitzgibbon, I think, is the right coach for this team. And they are still getting wins where in previous seasons that could have been a loss. That could have been a loss for the Sharks in previous seasons, but they are starting to cement that top 8 kind of position. I think they will be a top 8 side come the end of the season. Now, Tigers-Dragons played earlier today. Dragons won 24 points to 12 away at Campbelltown. The Tigers do not have a great record in Campbelltown in recent years. They've had a couple of good wins this season, the Tigers. There are some positive signs with the Tigers this year, with the intensity they're playing, their defence being a bit more intense, and their attack looking a little bit brighter. They've got a couple of injury concerns, but the Dragons have been a bit of a surprise package. They've been a bit inconsistent so far this season. They've had some good wins, they've had some bad losses. This was a good win for the Dragons. Obviously, Zach Lomax, that ongoing saga has been a bit of a distraction. We know he's going to the Eels for next year. He's been their best player. Zach Lomax has actually been their best player so far this season, and he's actually playing well in a position that he doesn't want to play in, which is on the wing. The Dragons, inconsistent. I don't think they're going to be as low down on the ladder as they were last year. I think Flanagan, as head coach, has started to get them going in the right direction. They still need some roster turnover. They need to freshen up that forward pack a little bit and that back line a little bit. There still needs to be, as I say, some roster turnover there and some rebuilding a little bit, but the signs are positive. The Tigers, while it is a bad defeat on the day, they've shown some very positive signs under Benji Marshall as head coach. I'm not going to lie, they're not as bad as last year. I think they're going to be a lot better than last year. They won't make the 8 this year, but the signs are there. It just was a bad defeat on the day, and it does happen. And their record at Campbelltown is not great, and that was a sellout crowd at Campbelltown as well. Similar to Leichhardt, the concerns about where they're going to, what their home ground or grounds are going to be in the future, and will they get funding to improve the facilities, and predominantly at Leichhardt, but to a certain extent at Campbelltown as well, has been the big talking point this season with the Tigers, obviously with that new board and new off-field management. The signs are there for the Tigers that there is improvement. There still needs to be some roster turnover and some more rebuilding to be done, but I think Benji Marshall with Morris as his assistant, I think the signs are positive despite the defeat. Now the Raiders-Titans, the Titans still searching for that elusive first win, but the last couple of weeks their performances have been really positive, even in defeat. They went to Golden Point, the Raiders win 21 points to 20 with a nice Jamal Fogarty field goal right at the death with only seconds remaining on the clock to seal the win for the Raiders. As a Raiders fan, I think they were in control of this game and blew it in the second half. The Titans have shown a lot of fight in recent weeks. I think they're not that far away from getting their first win of the season. They're not going to make the 8, the Titans. I think Des Hasler does have a tough job ahead of him. But recent weeks with their fighting performances in defeat, they are showing some real positive signs. But it's, again, a winless streak to start the season. 0-5 to start the season because they obviously had that bye round. But their defence is actually better than the Rabbitohs. So when the Bunnies and the Titans go head-to-head, that could be a very interesting game, considering where the Bunnies are at with their rather bad defence, conceding the most points on average. The Titans' defence has actually shortened up a little bit. They're now starting to concede less points and be in games a little bit longer, and their attack has improved. Their attack has been a concern for the Titans. Some more positive signs today. The Panthers obviously had the bye, and so there we go. What I've taken out the first 6 rounds on a final point is the intensity level, the pace level, the speed and the attack, and the physicality is almost on an Origin level. I don't know how much longer these teams can keep up this intensity, even through the Origin period. We've seen a lot of debutants and so a lot of younger players coming in. We're seeing a sort of changing of the guard at several teams. But on the intensity level and the pace that the game is being played at, how much longer can some of these teams, in fact all these teams, sustain that level of intensity throughout what is a very, very long season? And we haven't even reached the Origin period yet. as I say, the intensity levels and the brutality, which is a good thing, and the physicality is being played on an Origin level. That's why we're seeing so many close games, because sides are just willing to basically keep up the fight. The fitness levels of teams has been fantastic this season. The teams I'm really concerned about, and I have real concerns about, I think the Titans are starting to turn a corner defensively. They're still searching for that first win. I am concerned about the Bunnies, very, very concerned about them. They're the big concern for me. A lot of the other sides have just been very, very inconsistent. Everyone's beating everyone. The surprise package for me is my team, the Raiders. I wasn't expecting us to have as good a record at this point, but they're finding a way to win games and tough games as well. When game management, I think, is a concern for the Raiders. Tigers and Dragons, I think, are still rebuilding, but I think the green sheets are there for both sides. Cowboys, a little bit inconsistent with a couple of bad defeats, but they're still pretty solid. The Bulldogs are showing some good signs. The Knights and Roosters have been very inconsistent for me. The Storm are starting to show a few signs defensively that their game management as well is not as good as in previous years. Sea Eagles and Warriors have been refreshing this season, really refreshing. I hope to see them do well. Sharks, they're learning how to manage games. So Panthers still look pretty solid. They're showing a few more signs of being human, but their systems work so well. And signing Schneider was a great piece of business by the Panthers as cover for Luai and a replacement for Luai for next year, and Cleary when Origin comes along and injury, and he's proven himself as a decent replacement for Cleary while he's out. Good bit of business there. But the Bunnies are the one that sticks out for me as the biggest one with concern. They conceded the most points this weekend, 34, so they've got the worst defence. That doesn't help their defensive average for points, and they're not scoring enough. So there we go. That's my thoughts after round 6 of the 2024 NRL season. Place your thoughts in the comments section below, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.